Good evening to all. I am Subramaniam from QAI. Welcome to this webinar on distributed agile teams, challenges and best practices. Hope I am audible to you all right. Let me know if I am not audible. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So we'll start off with the webinar. Just to give you introduction, I am Subramaniam, or people call me as VSM. I had the agile practice in QAI. Before joining QAI, I was with Wipro, and before that I was working in DRDO. So today's topic is on distributed Scrum teams, challenges and best practices. What we will do is we will go through the Agile manifesto and principles. We will try to understand, what makes Agile methods work. Because it is so important that these are people-oriented practices that are very, very important for Agile methods to be effective. There will be some challenges when we operate on a distributed agile team environment. We also try to understand why distributed agile teams is very important for our business models, and what are the typical challenges that the distributed agile teams will have once they want to implement the agile methods and practices. We also look at do's and don'ts for distributed agile teams. Okay, so what we will do is, if you got any questions, perhaps you can send it through chat. Wherever possible, I will try to answer that. Otherwise, we can take all the questions at the end, and we can answer all those clarifications and questions that comes at the end. Getting back to, just to recap, right? What is Agile? As we all know, Agile is a umbrella term which is used for a lot of methods which use a iterative and incremental software development approach. The difference is here my iterations are clearly time boxed compared to a traditional iterative lifecycle method, right? This approach also requires focused on people, and it requires a lot of collaborations happening across the different members in the team. We will have what we call the inspect and adopt. Basically, as we develop product, we also look at how the product is getting developed through iterations. The requirements and solutions evolve through collaborations of cross-functional team that happens through the sprints and multiple sprints till a release. If you look at it, it is nothing but a set of practices which is focused more on the people. It doesn't mean that it will ignore process and technology as the other two important ingredients. But Agile, as we know, is more focused on the people aspect, and it is not a standard. It is a framework that needs to be followed, right? Basically, the focus of the Agile method is to produce incremental deliveries. Incremental deliveries not in terms of months, in terms of weeks. Idea is to show it to the business guys or product owner to get the feedback and then improve the product increment as we move forward in our project. So basically the feedback will help to improve the solutions, improve the design quality, and fail fast so that you can correct it and move forward. And the other approach that we have seen here also in the Agile methods is we need to test continuously so that the quality is inbuilt during our development system. And the other important ingredients are, it is adaptive. That means, okay, whether the planning or whether the process that we define for agile method is not fixed. As we move forward, we can also keep on customizing or changing it to the, or tailoring, or whatever we can call, to the needs of the project environment. And because of all these things, it has been and because of its rapid feedback and increment deliveries, it is one of the very most popular methods from last, I can say, about a decade. A lot of development projects across different organizations have started accepting and implementing agile methods. Moving on to the next slide, right? So if you look at it, basically how the agile methods evolved, because there were lots of issues with respect to traditional waterfall or other life cycle methods. The focus of the agile methods is based on 4 core values, which are articulated in the agile manifesto, which is called the individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaborations over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. It is very, very important, especially in the context of distributed Scrum teams, to understand these core values, because in the core values, say the first one is the individuals and interactions are very, very important. And we do have a challenge when once the distance and the time zone in distributed Scrum teams, the challenge is of the individuals and interactions, right? So again, a customer collaboration. So these are the challenges that we will have when once we work in a distributed team environment. Okay. So the core agile method articulates and is totally based on this agile manifesto. And the further agile manifesto is articulated through these 12 agile principles. Yeah. So if you look at the principles of agile, the highest priority is always to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of product increments. The team need to accept requirements at any point of time. Okay. So frequent delivery is a must. It is expected that the business people and the team continuously interact daily, and business people and the team need to work together, right? That is one of the core important agile principles. These are the set of principles and the core values that is accepted and need to be implemented when we follow agile methods. So at the center of it, if you look at it, agile methods are looked for. The fundamental reason that it came is because the traditional methods were not, I can say, amenable to responding to change, though they had a very clear way of doing it through change control board and change process. It was taking its own time. The fundamental value that agile methods brought into the table was its ability to respond to change. How it can be done? Through a set of core values that we saw in the agile manifesto, and these 4 values is articulated or extrapolated through a set of principles. Any agile any method that follows these set of 4 values and principles are called agile methods. Okay, how does this agile methods implement these core values and the principles? Through those set of practices. Let us look at those things, right? If you look at this slide number 10, what agile method says is, agile is a flexible development approach used to provide value to the stakeholder quicker in dynamic environment. because the requirements of the product backlog items are prioritized based on the business value. So the team takes up the high priority requirements and deliver it in weeks, in time boxed sprints, which are typically 2 to 3 weeks duration. It requires the active stakeholder participation, and it is typically a highly collaborative small teams. We will have lots of build and test development cycles, incremental deliveries. Any method which does these characteristics, which basically proposes these characteristics, are called as agile methods. So if you look at it, there are so many agile methods: Scrum, extreme programming, Kanban, or Lean. All these methods at the end of the day will have a vision, will have a set of core values, will incorporate iteration and continuous feedback. How does these methods do? They do through a set of defined roles and set of defined practices among with respect to each of these methods. They have got their own practices, and through those practices the set of core values and the principles are met. At their lightweight adoptable method, they empower people to become self-organized and start delivering things. See, one of the important things that we need to look at it is all these methods at the end of the day have definite potential for providing business benefits by delivering high business value products or applications in incremental way. But the issue is, it is very, very important that all these methods need to be, all these practices need to be adopted properly. Otherwise it can cause significant disruption if these are not adhered to, especially the principles and the core values. Otherwise we will not get the benefits. Having said that, so let us look at, these are the different agile methods: extreme programming, Scrum, Crystal, and each of these things will have their own terminologies. Like for example, in Scrum we call that as sprint, whereas in extreme programming we may call as iterations. But the whole focus is to ensure that the principles and the core values, the agile manifesto, is implemented through a set of roles and set of practices in all these methods. Okay, so if you look at it, what makes these agile methods work? It is all about having a collaborative, highly communicative team across different stakeholders within the team: testers, developers, designers, architects, as well as with the business guys. And definitely it is the whole process or the systems are not fixed. One can adopt, inspect and adopt as we move forward, take feedback on the product increment as well as on the process that is being followed for the development of that product increment, and there is a shared ownership, fixed time box methods, right? So short feedback loops, and the team makes commitment and there is an accepted responsibility. Okay, all these things are the core essence of the agile methods, if you ask me. And how these things, if you take one of the method like Scrum, which is most popular in the industry, how does this gets instantiated, right? It gets instantiated through a set of roles. We have got Scrum Master role, we have got Product Owner role, and Scrum Team role. These are the three roles that are defined in the Scrum methods, and these roles and set of ceremonies or events, whatever you can call through release planning, sprint planning, daily Scrum, backlog grooming. We have got what we call a sprint review, demos, and the retrospective through a set of a very clearly laid down, I can say, guidelines on how to conduct, who all should participate, what needs to be done during those events by these three roles, and they need to again like come up with certain outputs or the artifacts, right? So one of the important artifact or sorry, one of the important output of all these things is product increment. Apart from that, we need to come up with product backlog, release backlog, definition of ready or definition of done. We should have a goal, right? Impediment list. All these things are the other intermediate things that comes out as the project start executing by applying these Scrum methods, Scrum practices. So this is very important. As we know, it is very important to have collaboration and very important to have communication among the team members, because the focus of the agile methods is not on the documentation, right? So these are the challenges, or these are the asks that the agile and Scrum methods will have. And let us look at what are the challenges that we have in a multi-location agile or distributed Scrum teams. So if you look at it, why we need to get into distributed agile teams? With whatever the reality is, all IT companies or all software development happens through distributed teams. Okay, maybe one of the reason could be lower cost of labor. That could be one reason. The other reason is to get into time to market faster by following the Sun model, so that we can increase the people working on the project by capturing talent available in the other parts of the world, and so that we can have instead of 8 hours a working day, we can have more than 16 hours or 12 to 16 hours a working day, so that the output from the team can be more or can be faster, and that helps in a time to market model. And definitely this offshoring or outsourcing will help the clients and to increase or decrease the team size depending upon their demand, and for the business, whatever, for the IT requirements or the product requirements. So that is one reason why the distributed teams are very important. Offshoring or outsourcing is very important. And the other important reason, that if you look at it, the distributed team also are these offshoring, outsourcing phenomenon provides access to new markets. Okay, so business expand to new market, and again, they will gain expertise in those markets, and as well as they open up their own subsidiary in those markets. And these are main reasons why the distributed team phenomenon or outsourcing and offshoring is definitely a reality in today's world. Okay, typically, especially with respect to IT development or application or product development, how does a distributed team pattern works? So there are broadly, I think it is classified under three heads. We call them as isolated Scrum teams. So what we mean by isolated Scrum team is there is a big program that is going on, which is perhaps driven from an on-site or from a host country, right? And then multiple teams will be working on different functionalities, different features, or different sub teams, right? So there may be a case where some of the teams may be using agile methods or Scrum methods, some may be using the traditional methods. That is possible. Okay, so that means to say that they will be having their own challenges if all the teams within the program is not following one particular cadence of delivery, like time box delivery. So that could be one pattern that we have seen when especially the distributed team adopts agile. A lot of cases are there where partly some teams start following this Scrum, whereas their counterparts in other locations or other geographies may be following the traditional methods. That is the one typical a pattern that we have seen. The other pattern is distributed Scrum teams. When we say distributed Scrum teams, it is basically different teams working in different geographies under a big program or a product. Definitely their goal is to make release for that product or application, but they are cross-functional teams. They will have developer, tester, product owner, scrum master as a part of their team, and there will be some amount of dependencies, a minimum dependencies, since they are all working under umbrella of one big program. It may be required that some of the outputs of or the deliverables of this particular team may have dependency or impact with the development of the other team. So that is one pattern that we have seen as distributed agile team patterns in the industry. So here this is the one which is primarily advocated by the Scrum Alliance too, where a concept of Scrum needs to be used when we are trying to bring all the different Scrum teams for synchronizing the different Scrum teams on their deliverables. The other one is called as globally integrated teams. Here it is basically a one team. What I mean by a global integrated Scrum teams is there is only one team. So the developers or testers within that team may be distributed across different geographies, and they will be working on one sprint backlog. So the way in which we can differentiate between a distributed Scrum team to global integrated teams is the distributed Scrum team may be working on a one set of product backlog item for that product or application development, but they'll be having their own separate sprint backlogs, right, based on their sub teams product backlog that they have derived from the main product backlog teams. Whereas when I talk of a globally integrated team, all these guys will be working on one set of product backlog items and then the same set of sprint backlog items, but the teams may be dispersed across the different cities and different geographies. So these are the three typical patterns of the distributed team that we have seen in the industry, right? So if in such scenarios, definitely there are many challenges. Some of the challenges are distance and time difference. So there is definitely team members locations, and the time zones are so different. It is really difficult to have a team building and ad hoc interaction. So in fact, compared to a co-located team, there is not much scope for ad hoc interaction so that the team building can happen. And this is very, very important. If you look from the agile principles or agile values perspective, it is very important because the focus on this agile and Scrum method is more on people to build a cross-functional, motivated, self-organizing team. It is very important to have a good team communication, right? And sometimes the distributed teams are dispersed east to west, and the time difference provide only a small window of opportunity for interaction. Okay, that is another challenge these teams will have. And looking from the cultural and communication point of view, because of the distance and time difference, definitely there is an impact on the communication. Okay, and it also the other factors that have a bearing is on the culture, on the language difference. Okay, so that will have their own challenges in terms of team communicating with each other, the product owner explaining what is required from the business point of view, and the developers, unless they are having the same language, even or a different geography, may try to will take their own time to understand correctly. So that is another challenge. Okay. And these communication challenges will have their own issues in terms of building relationships and shared understanding of what we are trying to build. Okay, shared understanding of getting a big picture of what needs to be done. The other thing that we also have seen commonly across different distributed agile teams is the technical expertise. Okay, uh, technical expertise coming from different teams will have lots of challenges, and there are a lot of variation there, and and the different levels of process maturity, standards, and terminologies used. Okay, so all these things will add up to the challenge of the team working or gelling together and delivering it in a sprint duration of 2 weeks, because you're left with the team as such is expected to deliver potential shippable increment. That is what is called as a product increment in a matter of 2 weeks. These challenges of incompatibility in terms of process, terminology, language, standards, and communications, will have their own challenges in being effective, right? And the other thing is building trust, right? There is always a challenge of miscommunication, misunderstanding, us versus them, from one team to other team, and these are the other issues that needs to be addressed when we are trying to build a collaborative team. Okay, so even the scheduling of events, or like sprint planning, release planning, will have their own challenges as the time differences between different teams operating as the distributed agile teams will have their own issues or challenges. And since the teams are distributed, and basically there is always one team which is telling do this, and a lack of common understanding, okay, of user stories or a big picture. So that is another challenge that we see generally in all these distributed agile teams. And of course the common environment, tools, especially the access to the servers, different servers, different environments. It could be test environment, development environment, or production environment, or other challenges. Okay, so then comes the last one, the security. So these are all typically lots and lots of challenges for the distributed agile teams to surmount when they want to be effective versus a co-located team. So from next onward, let us see, for example, what are the typical best practices that we have seen to address some of these challenges in the agile distributed teams. And of course, there are lots of studies have been made, and definitely if you look at it, there is an impact in terms of productivity or a quality compared to a co-located team. So we need to take that into consideration. But the studies have said that if there are good practices that are followed to address these challenges which a typical distributed team faces, this can be, the productivity can be as high as about 80 to 85% compared to a co-located team. And some studies and some surveys and actual data has been gathered and compared with respect to the quality and productivity of a co-located team, and these things have been published in lots of paper and lots of conferences. So let us look at this, these, what are the kind of best practices for addressing some of these challenges. And communication, collaboration, and building trust. Okay, so as we say, it is very, very important. Individuals and interactions against process and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Okay, since these are the core values of agile, it is very, very important that all the different stakeholders in the team should should know each other, should have trust, so that a commitment can be made. How can this happen? Definitely, we need to address it by the teams travel. Travel during the project inception is very, very important, and we need to bring the whole team together so that the personal bonds or personal rapport among the team can be built. Okay, so we need to mitigate the miscommunication, misunderstanding, as I was telling, and we have seen in very key important projects, it may be a good idea for the whole team from one location to travel to other location, spend time for at least during the start of the project some few sprints, 2-3 sprints there, and then come back and then start the work from their own site. Okay, that is another example, another practice that we have seen in lot of organization. So idea is, not only you will get a big picture, but you will also get to know the various ways in which, or various practices the other teams will work, and that will help the team not only to gel it, need to understand the environment, need to understand the technical tools, technical environments, and so that when you come back to your own site, one will be able to address some of these communication and the collaboration challenges. The other important thing is definitely lots of focus need to be given for communication tools, video conferencing tools, and chats, desktop sharing model. All these things need to be used frequently as much as possible, and definitely one cannot and should not rely on the email as the only channel of communication. We'll have lots of issues if we do that. And it is important that senior and technical leads or business guys, product owners, business experts need to travel to different sites, especially the offshore, and interact with the development team. One of the definite benefits that if a product owner or business oriented person visits the different locations and communicates with the development team, it provides very clear on why this application we are doing and what for and why it is important, and instead of telling what to do without being told why it is important, it makes lot of difference. So the business guy or a product owner traveling to the offshore team will help the team to get a good idea of what we are doing, why we are doing, and so that it gets a big picture, and that itself motivates the team, and they will try to figure out way of collaborating much better, right? So these are all the different best practices that we have seen in different organizations, and I can say especially the overlapping time zone is a must, the must practice. It is not a best practice, it is a must practice. It is definitely vital to create a overlapping office hours so that the remote teams can communicate, resolve problems, and bridge time zones for other mission critical tasks. So if these time zones are not, if the overlapping time zones are not there, if some issue comes, if from a developer a query go to a product owner will see next day and then provides a clarification, and again a product owner will send that clarification on the second day, and the developer reads, and if it doesn't understand, for even some simple clarification, simple issues that needs to be sorted out among the team members, it will take 2-3 days. Okay, so it is very, very essential that a overlapping time zone should be there, and that should need to be used effectively for clarifying a lot of these clarifications, whether it could be technical, whether it could be the requirement related, or it could be test setup or it could be access related, whatever it is. It is very, very important. Overlapping office hours should be there, and lot of time these overlapping office hours typically happens because of the time zone during late evening or late night for one of the teams, right? So I think if you have got that overlapping time during the day, better engagement and collaboration will happen. And at least it should be shared between the team. One team can stay later 1 week, and the other team can stay later for one more week, like that. That is how one can build a good team bonding, and which is very, very important for this agile teams. The other important thing is about how we can structure or how we can organize the team itself, right? So definitely, as such, the agile development, since it is not focused on any particular process or standard, it requires a great deal of discipline among the team members for their collaboration, for their commitment. Okay, even co-located team requires a great deal of discipline, and being a distributed agile development team is much more harder and require much more discipline to stay on track. Okay, so and for that, why we are doing, why this practice, what are the importance of product backlog grooming. It is one of the very important, I can say, activity that, and not given much importance. Okay, definition of ready, for example. Okay, so why it is important, what needs to be done in a sprint planning, all these things are not known to many teams. And lot of again, the distributed agile team gets into their first taste of agile through distributed team. In fact, for me, moving people from working on a co-located agile teams and then moving them to distributed team, is much better than making them to transition from a traditional method to a distributed agile team. That will have its own challenges, because people are not able to understand the concepts of principles and practices. So training on basics of agile is very important, and it is very important that there should be a person, a coach, a senior coach or a senior scrum master to help address the issues of the team that faces day in and day out. While challenges of collaborating, coordination among the different geographies and the different time zone teams, and wherever the roles of product owner or scrum master is played from other locations where a sizable development team is working on at the different site, then it may be a good practice to have a proxy scrum master or a proxy product owner, right? So, and it is very, very important to have a product owner's daily meeting and a scrum of scrum meetings to sort out all the impediments and issues and dependencies from one team member working in one geography to other geography, other city. Okay, it is very, very important. Okay, so the other important thing which IT is used to is like putting a guy into the team and removing that guy after the project is over. Okay, so as such, trying to understand the way of working in agile itself is one challenge, and trying to work in a distributed team is another bigger challenge. So frequent reorganizing of the distributed teams, after one project, you remove that guy and bring a new guy, it will have its own challenges. So it is better to avoid frequent team changes, and it is more disruptive compared to a co-located agile team, right? Even we say that the agile team guys need to work, definitely at least there should not be change in the team members for a release, worst case for a sprint, right? So if you look from that, as the focus is more on team bonding, collaboration, self-organizing, changing frequent team members will have lots of challenge. And when once the team is getting into the agile for the first time, or the distributed agile for the first time, it may be a worthwhile to give less important requirements, or start them to help in terms of bug fixing, whatever you can call, so that the on-site team also gets confidence with the offshore deliverables, so that they can start sharing the more complex work, or more complex tasks, or more complex user stories going forward. So this is a very important thing on building or how to build distributed teams. The other thing that we have seen is the practice of allocating work, right? So allocating work based on the function. Okay, development team, testing team in another geo, business guys or business analyst in some other place, and and the work flows from one team to other flow like a typical waterfall. And definitely this is not a good way of making teams based on the job function. The best is to distribute a single story, if not a story, a set of epic across set of stories or epic across the whole team, so that the whole team should be cross functional. Okay, so instead of when I say cross functional, it should contain all the team members within that team, within that location, having the business analyst or a proxy product owner, developer, testers together. So and the work needs to be organized in such a way that other team, they will be able to deliver a good business value product increment. The other important thing that we need to look at it is in terms of the technical alignment. Team members from different background and region may have divergent preference for their technologies and tools. It is very important that the misalignment in terms of engineering best practices can also create conflicts. Whether we need to do a test driven development, or test first or test later, or following a different standards, or coding standards, framework used, or architectural design. So all these things, there should be a technical good alignment. Okay, so the other important point is the development environment typically should be same for all the guys, even though they are working in multiple locations. There should be a shared development, test acceptance and server, so that people will be able to log in. And these are all the most important factors that will have definite impact on the effectiveness of the distributed team. The other thing that we have also seen is the implementation or following of some of the extreme programming practices, especially with respect to the continuous integration, okay, frequent build, and test automation, unit testing, or refactoring. Okay, all these things, though in a co-location team, these are also the most important things, but definitely in a distributed team, it's very important for the engineering practices to be effective. Otherwise, the output coming out of these distributed agile teams will have lots of quality issues. Yes, I think the slide talks about the continuous integration, and there should be a single code repository and single continuous integration server. It is expected that the distributed teams will be checking into the same code base, and all teams will use the same server or their continuous integration box. Okay, so I think what we have seen is lot of distributed agile teams will have lots of issues with respect to these I can say infrastructure issues. So this is one of the most important thing that we need to plug in, or we need to ensure that these things need to be taken care before we even start planning the um, distributed agile project execution activities, right? So definitely we need to employ a minimum build policy, okay, frequency of the minimum build policy and all those things. These are all very very important practices, without which the distributed agile team will have their own challenges in terms of success. Again, that we talked about the environment, we talked about the tools. uh, the distributed teams need to produce additional artifacts. So let us be very very clearly understanding that though the focus of documentation in agile is less, but as the distributed teams we may need to again we may need to create additional documentation. Yeah, that is given in a distributed. How much additional, how much adequate, one need to look at the kind of whether they are integrated distributed teams or whether they are distributed scrum teams, cross functional. It all depends upon the structure, it all depends upon the project environment that they are working on. Okay, so tool alignment, wikis, blogs, knowledge base, all these things are the important practices which they need to follow. Okay, so these are some of the, I can say, do's and don'ts for some of the uh, distributed scrum teams. Going forward, if one looks at it, uh, starts executing sprints, or starts executing, taking up a release cycle. So what are the key things that one needs to focus on when we are working as a distributed agile team? Let us look at some few of those points in these slides. Sprint length. Okay, sprint length, preferably smaller sprint length, because especially when we are working in a distributed agile team, there could be lots of issues, lots of dysfunctional issues that can crop up, and a shorter sprint length will make them appear, will make them visible faster, so that one can take corrective action. So if you take a sprint length of 4 weeks, or more than that, of course, which is not allowed, which is not recommended in Scrum, if one takes that, the visibility or the frequency of visibility of these issues will have their own, will be much longer. So especially at the start of the projects, it is strongly recommended that the sprint length should be 2 weeks or even 1 week, okay, depending upon the task that the team is delivering. Okay, and especially when once all the teams are following Scrum, it is very important to synchronize not only the sprint length, the starting date of the sprint as well as the end date of the sprint, right? So at the most 1 or 2 days of a shift, so that the other teams can participate in the sprint planning and the sprint reviews. Apart from that, there should not be more shift in the start date and the end date and the sprint duration across different teams. Okay, it is very very important. Okay, so the PBI is single product backlog for multiple teams. Distributed Scrum team work independently from one another and can have their own individual sprint backlogs, as we discussed earlier. So if of course it is a global integrated single team, yeah, they are working on a common sprint backlog. Otherwise, if the functionality or features are divided such that there is minimum dependencies and each of the team can have their own sprint back, but at the end of the day they will be working on one main product backlog item, which gets distributed based on different functionality, different features each team is working on. And team composition, team rules and collaboration to be made clear. So definitely the time zones, when do we interact, overlap, and perhaps the accessibility of product owner, all those things, simple rules need to be made, and they need to be adhered to. Okay, it is very very important to have a common understanding, because mail communication is one of the biggest risk factors for effective implementation of agile methods in distributed teams. Okay, so all these things especially need to be upfront, like what are the different kind of documentation, okay, that needs to be done. For example, I'm doing a daily scrum. Do I need to summarize and send it to the other team, other part of the geography which is not participating? Yes. If that is so, let us agree as that as the guideline for the team rules, and then that needs to be adhered to. Similarly, what time, what are the time factors, or what are the time zones in which the product owner, especially the main product owner, will be available for clarifying the doubts, and tech leads in terms of, or the architects in terms of some technical challenges that team may have. All these things need to be sorted out and need to be upfront communicated to the respective guys. So one of the when we are to look at the sprint planning, right, one of the practical conflict in the distributed scrum is the fact that typically all these things need more time. Okay, in a co-located team, perhaps you can have a 2-hour session for a 1 week or a 4-hour session continuously. But when you are talking of a distributed team, your time zone matters a lot, and typically this takes more time than a co-located time. So that needs to be taken care, or need to be planned, and you need to put some buffer for such kind of activities upfront. Okay, so if the time zones are so challenging, because especially if you are working in a India and US time zone, there could be challenge in getting a 4 hours time together. In such cases, it may be it's a good idea to break the sprint into 2 parts. In the first part, the product owner and scrum master basically can use a screen sharing tool to display all the product backlog items and provide the clarifications or required, and explain the goal, what needs to be done, and what the user story is all about, and expectations in terms of its functionality, acceptance criteria, definition of done. All those things can be discussed during the first half, and the team can go back and then can do an analysis and breakdown of it into the task. And in the next day, and they've got a lot of questions, the same team along with the product owner, scrum master, need to meet and provide further elaboration and further clarifications. So that is a typical practice that we have seen in multiple teams, where the team is not able to conduct in one session a sprint planning event or ceremony. The other thing that we have also seen is the daily stand-ups. Okay, it is very, very important for the distributed teams to have a webcam or a conference call each day that is convenient to all. As I told earlier also, we need to ensure that the team at different locations are comfortable, so that you must choose a time zone that is convenient to both the teams and rotate the convenient times, so daytime among different locations. It is very, very important to ensure that the team is motivated and eager to participate in these daily scrum meeting, because the daily scrum meeting becomes the most important meeting, especially for the distributed teams. They need to again get a lot of clarity, and they need to again dependency issues needs to be clarified, okay, or need to be brought up in these kind of meetings, right? So if the time zone is such that you cannot conduct these kind of common daily scrum, then one approach is to conduct a local daily scrum and pass on the information through documentation or a Liaison approach. So that is another way of doing things. So then again, the sprint review, it's most important. It's planned at a time when the entire team, including all guys, are available. More so for distributed team, because a lot of time we have seen in the distributed, the way in which the patterns are, they will deliver it to the on-site team. Somebody in the on-site team makes a demo to the end user or the business user or product owner or important stakeholders, and these guys are not kept in loop on what happened. Okay, that is definitely a dysfunctional issue for a smooth functioning, and it is very, very important that all these, especially the sprint review, needs to be done, and all the team members need to participate. So they need to have a first-hand comments about what was produced, and that will help them to get much more ownership on the deliverable that they have given. Okay. Okay. So if and there are different ways, if it is not possible to have all remote teams, then at least one should have a way of or an instrument to understand what has gone through, and a remote proxy sprint review guy should be there, and we need to work around, but it is very important for all the team members to be there. And the other thing is the retrospective. Retrospective is always thought as um, not so important compared to a demo, right? But if you look at it from the distributed team, this is more important, because the more issues there will be in distributed teams, okay, the more thorough and effective the sprint retrospective needs to be. So if you ask me, the sprint retrospective plays a major role, especially in the distributed teams. Okay, so alternative is to local team to hold their own retrospective, and each team then sharing the action items. So these are all workarounds that can be practiced, but we must ensure that these things are practiced in sprint. And the product backlog refinement is another important activity, where the product owner and the Scrum team, distributed team, need to participate, and lot of importance is not given to such key important event, and especially it will have a major impact with respect to distributed teams. Okay, so just to conclude, in terms of distributed agile teams, don't underestimate the cultural pacts. One should have a good travel budget, need to use short iteration, status regular short meetings. Okay, so common tools and good communication tools need to be definitely there. Virtual team building, wikis, photos, and there should be a shared team vocabulary, and as I was saying, at least basic engineering practice like continuous integration, logging on or checking into the same code server, or integration, common integration server. These are all very, very important for agile methods to be very effective. Okay, so definitely expect need to have more document compared to a co-located agile teams, and Scrum of Scrum concept needs to be effectively implemented, especially when the teams are distributed across. Okay, so these are all the points that we need to ensure. And as again, like summarizing, there is no one right way to do distributed development using agile or Scrum. Based on the project organization, like it could be a distributed Scrum teams or multi-location integrated team, these practices need to be evaluated and chosen based on what suits for the particular environment, right? So team to ensure that the principles and standard practice of the Scrum are not compromised at all. So that is what I would like to summarize, and with that I would like to close my presentation. And if you have got any questions, just have taken perhaps exact 1 hour. If you can send it through a chat, perhaps I would be able to take that question and answer.